My mother-in-law looked straight at me and said in a cold voice, "Anyone who doesn't help with housework is not welcome in this house." Her tone made it clear she thought she had the upper hand. I could tell she expected me to feel guilty, apologize, and beg for forgiveness. She probably thought I'd promised to do better. What surprised me most was not her words, but my husband's reaction. He was sitting right next to her, leaning back in his chair, smirking as if he was enjoying a comedy show. He didn't say anything to defend me. Instead, his face clearly said he was happy watching me get scolded. At that moment, instead of feeling sad or angry, I felt strangely calm, like something inside me had finally clicked into place. I didn't argue, I didn't try to explain myself, I just said, "All right then, I'll leave, and I won't bother worrying about what happens here anymore." My voice was steady, not shaky. I knew I meant it, and in that moment, I realized something important. They were the ones who should be regretting their behavior, not me. My name is Susan, I'm 42 years old, I work full-time, and until recently, I also managed our household. My husband, John, and I have 2 grown-up children who've moved out and started their own lives. For years, John and I had been looking forward to this stage of life, peaceful evenings, time for ourselves, maybe even traveling a bit, but that dream was short-lived. After my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law came to live with us. We wanted to help her, and in the beginning, I thought it wouldn't be too difficult, but life changed completely after she moved in. Because of my job, I often get home late, sometimes after 8 in the evening. I'm usually tired but ready to relax for a moment. Instead, when I walk through the door, I'm greeted by chaos. The living room looks like a storm just passed through. Snack wrappers, clothes lying around, empty glasses on the coffee table. My husband is usually there, lying on the sofa with the TV blaring, a beer in his hand. He doesn't even glance at me when I walk in. Dinner is never ready. The kitchen is quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I feel a pang of disappointment every time, but I still put my bag down and head straight there to start cooking. That's usually when my mother-in-law appears. She'll step out of her room, fold her arms, and start in on me. "You're late again. I'm starving. You keep saying you work overtime, but you never take care of the house. You're not a good homemaker." Her words sting, but they're nothing new. She criticizes everything: how late I come home, the meals I make, even how I fold laundry. She blames me for any little thing that bothers her. At first, I tried defending myself. I explained my work schedule. I told her I was doing my best, but I learned quickly that it's useless. The more I respond, the more she argues. Now I just nod and keep cooking, waiting for her to finish. What hurts even more is how John acts. Sometimes, my mother-in-law will say, "A good wife appreciates her husband. You have no charm." And John will smirk and add, "That's right, isn't it?" As if we're all sharing a joke, except the joke is on me. When I serve dinner, neither of them lifts a finger to help. They sit and wait, expecting me to put everything on the table as if I'm a servant. I've told them many times to eat without me when I'm late, but they ignore it. It wasn't always like this. Before my mother-in-law moved in, John actually helped. We both worked, so we shared chores. If I came home late, he'd make dinner, feed the kids, and tidy up. We managed well because we were a team, but after she arrived, that all stopped. Now he joins her in criticizing me instead of helping. The most frustrating part is that my mother-in-law contributes nothing financially. She had money after her husband passed away but spent it carelessly, buying expensive clothes and unnecessary things. She even got into debt. Now she lives here rent-free, with her bills covered by us, yet still finds fault with everything I do. When she first moved in, she acted polite and humble, saying she'd be considerate. She even bowed deeply in gratitude. But only 3 days later, she began criticizing my housekeeping. At first, I thought it was almost funny how quickly she changed, but the joke stopped when I realized she truly believed I was failing as a wife. She disapproves of my job, too. I've explained that I work late because it's important for our finances, but she insists I should quit and take a part-time job at a local supermarket. In her mind, a daughter-in-law's place is in the home. She doesn't understand or care about my career. Even meals are a constant battle. She insists dinner must be at 6 p.m., with 3 side dishes, and that we all eat together. But I can't always make that happen because of work. She complains about breakfast, too. We used to have bread or just buy lunch later, but she hates that. When she accuses me of working because John's salary isn't enough, I look to him for support. But he just says, "You'll learn your lesson eventually," and lets the conversation drop. It's clear now that John likes being seen as the man of the house, who doesn't need to lift a finger. I've started to suspect he's enjoying this setup, watching his mother scold me, not having to help, and quietly resenting that I earn more than him. Over time, I've realized something else. When my mother-in-law questions whether John is truly the head of the family, he seems pleased. It makes me see just how small-minded he really is. I've spent many sleepless nights wondering what to do. My mother-in-law keeps stirring trouble, and John doesn't have my back. Before she came, I didn't have the courage to make any big decisions, but now I'm reaching my limit. And then one day, while I was out shopping, a neighbor stopped me. She smiled politely but then said something I didn't expect. One afternoon, while I was shopping for groceries, I ran into one of my neighbors. She looked at me with an odd expression, half polite, half critical, and suddenly asked, "Are you being considerate of your mother-in-law?" I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" She explained that she never liked her own mother-in-law much, but she didn't think she was inconsiderate. Then, out of nowhere, she dropped a bombshell. She had heard stories about me from my own mother-in-law. According to her, I didn't do any housework. The house was always filthy, laundry piled high, and my poor mother-in-law's rheumatism had gotten worse because she was forced to do all the chores. She even claimed her son, my husband, came home late every night because he didn't want to be around me. The neighbor's voice was calm, but her words cut deep. She said my mother-in-law told her we barely ate real meals, just bread, day after day, because I couldn't be bothered to cook. My mother-in-law had even cried to her about how terrible her life was with me. I was stunned. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The image she was painting of me was the complete opposite of reality. It suddenly clicked. This explained why people in the neighborhood had been giving me cold looks lately. My mother-in-law, small and frail on the outside but clever with words, had been spreading lies to gain sympathy. She was making herself look like a suffering saint stuck with a lazy, heartless daughter-in-law. The neighbor gave me one last icy stare, as if she had already decided I was guilty, and I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "That's not true," I mumbled, but my voice sounded weak even to me. Without another word, I turned and hurried home. When I walked into the living room, there was my mother-in-law, lounging on the sofa, watching TV with a bag of snacks in her hand. She didn't even glance at me until I spoke. "Please stop spreading lies about me," I said firmly, my voice shaking with anger. She looked up, smirked, and said, "But it's true." Something inside me snapped right then. If she was so determined to believe her own lies, and make others believe them, then fine. I'd give her exactly what she wanted. From that moment on, I decided I wouldn't lift a single finger for her or my husband ever again. The very next day, I came home from work and, as expected, my mother-in-law started yelling the second I walked in. She demanded dinner, grumbling that she was starving. My husband joined in with his usual sarcastic remarks. I didn't even bother replying. I went to my stash, pulled out a cup of instant ramen, and made just enough for myself. Then I sat at the table, calmly eating while they stared at me. My mother-in-law's face turned red. "So now you're proving you're the worst daughter-in-law who doesn't do housework, huh? Fine, if that's how you want it, so be it." I kept eating, my chopsticks moving steadily, and she seemed momentarily lost for words. Then she turned to my husband, looking for backup. When he came over to me, I told him exactly why I was acting this way. "Your mom's been telling everyone in the neighborhood that I'm a lazy wife who does nothing." When I told her to stop, she insisted it was true. "So from now on, I'll give her exactly the behavior she's been describing." He sighed, looking troubled. "Mom probably exaggerated, don't be so stubborn." That was all I needed to hear. Even after hearing the truth, he still took her side. I didn't bother arguing. I finished my ramen, threw the empty cup in the trash, and went straight to the bathroom without another word. From that day, I stopped doing anything for them. No cooking, no cleaning, no laundry, nothing. On my day off, I woke up late and walked into the living room. My mother-in-law ordered me to go buy bread because there was none left. "Why don't you buy it yourself?" I said calmly. "I'll only get my own food from now on, and if you want something, pay for it yourself." She sputtered in outrage, but I ignored her, made myself coffee, and enjoyed my breakfast in peace. Afterwards, I only tidied my own space in the living room, then sat down with a book. For the first time in a long while, I felt a quiet sense of control over my own life. But my peace didn't last long. The doorbell rang. On the monitor, I saw a group of more than 5 elderly people, familiar faces, standing outside, looking angry. My mother-in-law rushed to open the door. One by one, they filed in, and before I could even ask what was going on, one of them shouted, "I hear you're the wicked daughter-in-law who doesn't even feed your own mother-in-law." I froze. These people were my mother-in-law's siblings and their spouses, 9 people in total. She had told them all the same lies she'd been telling the neighbors, but this time, she had added even worse details. She claimed I refused to let her bathe, that I starved her, that I treated her like a servant, and now her siblings were here to teach me a lesson. They surrounded me, their voices rising. One banged his cane on the floor, shouting for me to apologize. My heart was pounding so hard I felt lightheaded. My husband arrived in the middle of the chaos, but instead of defending me, he criticized me too. At that moment, whatever love I still had for him completely vanished. One relative even suggested we divorce. My mother-in-law pretended to be generous, saying she'd give me another chance if I promised to serve her and my husband properly. They even decided they'd take turns checking up on me every week to make sure I was doing the chores. Satisfied with themselves, they all went out for sushi together. As she left, my mother-in-law called back, "The house better be clean when we get home." When they were gone, I sat alone in the messy living room and cried. We used to be happy before she moved in. How did it come to this? Why was I the one being punished when I had tried so hard? A few hours later, they returned. My mother-in-law, tipsy from drinking, sneered at me. "Leave, we don't need a wife who doesn't do housework. Didn't I tell you to clean earlier?" My husband grinned beside her, clearly expecting me to apologize. Instead, I stood up and said, "Fine, I'll leave then." They laughed, thinking I was bluffing, but I packed my things in silence and walked out, not looking back. 2 weeks later, my mother-in-law called, her voice frantic. "John says he has no money. What does that mean?" I told her the truth. "John only earns a third of what I do. I've been paying all the bills, and by the way, the house is in my name. I'm going to sell it, so you need to move out." She went silent, then started begging me to come back, saying she was sorry and my husband was lonely, but I had already decided to divorce. With the help of a lawyer, I ended the marriage and received a small consolation payment. My children supported me completely, saying it was their father and grandmother's fault. I sold the house, forcing them to move in with relatives temporarily. Eventually, her lies caught up with her, and even her own family rejected them. Now they live together in a small apartment, blaming each other for everything. My ex-husband still sends me messages, claiming he's cut ties with his mother and wants me back, but I'm considering blocking him, because without them, I finally feel free. From now on, I'm going to live my life gracefully, focusing only on myself.